I'm Brian Reynolds, the Chancellor of the Archdiocese of Louisville. Welcome to our podcast series, What's New in ArchLou? This show highlights the people and ministries of the Archdiocese, the Catholic Church in Central Kentucky. Join us each month as we welcome guests to discuss our local church and invite you to get involved as you deepen your own engagement with your Catholic faith. This program is brought to you by the ArchLou Podcast Network. Well, everybody, it's hot season. We're in the middle of July here now. Welcome, everybody. And we have a very special show today. We're happy to welcome as our guest Teague Ridge, who's the founder of Talgrace Marketing and Media, where we have filmed every episode of this podcast series over these years. He's been just off camera most of the time, working the controls for each of those episodes. In total, Teague produces 12 different podcasts at Talgrace, many of which he serves as co-host. But he doesn't get to co-host today. You get to be a guest. Are you excited for your first appearance?
I'll be honest with you. I'm humbled you guys asked me to be here, but I'm a little bit nervous being on this side. I'll be honest with you. It's a lot easier when you get to ask the questions.
I'll try to be nice.
Thank you.
Very good. Teague is a member of Ascension Parish here in Louisville, where he attended grade school and remains an active member to this day. Mm-hmm. He's a graduate of St. Xavier High School and went to Belmont University in Nashville on a golf scholarship. You're going to hear more about that in a minute. Teague has been married to Laura for 20 years and has two children, Talon, who attends Trinity, and Annette, who attends Ascension. Now, before we ask you anything else, I want to know, where does the name Teague come from?
I'm glad you asked that. It's Gaelic. So I have a very Irish family, and it's Gaelic for my dad's name, Timothy.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how Laura and I ended up on Talon for our son. Now, it's not spelled correctly, but we wanted a Gaelic T name for our son as well.
I was just in Ireland last month. I have to figure out how I missed that and find all the T's.
I'm jealous.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. You have an interesting background for sure. I mentioned that you went on a golf scholarship in college. And then you also golfed professionally and worked as a club pro.
Right.
Your family even helped build golf courses, including Persimmon Ridge, one of the foremost golf courses here in Kentucky. You also were on a successful band, Heaven Hill, which I thought was a type of bourbon, so we had to figure
Which it is.
Okay. Which chartered and toured. So let's talk about those experiences. First, talk to me about golf.
Yeah, so I grew up on a golf course. I could swing a golf club before I could walk.
Okay.
My uncle is in the PGA National Hall of Fame. My other uncle is a golf professional who's invented all kinds of cool golf products that everybody that plays golf knows and uses. The cabanas that are on the back of golf carts, my uncle invented that. The golf cart enclosures that go over golf carts. He invented a game called tic-tac-putt. So my family has just been entrenched in the golf business my whole life. So golf is one of those things. I grew up at the golf course. So when I was little, my grandmother took care of me before I was school age and then during the summers. Well, she ran the concession stand kitchen for a golf course in Lawrenceburg that my uncle owned called Bobolink at the time. Okay. It's now called Wild Turkey Trace. So every day I grew up at the golf course. I was there just on the range and the golf course pool and the clubhouse and the pro shop. And it's kind of what I did. I knew a lot more about golf than I did anything else growing up.
So because you went on a golf scholarship, I assume you played competitively in high school?
Oh, yeah. So I played at St. X, which we had a great team at St. X. I played with Cody Mudd was our number one, and Mudd's a big name in the golf industry. And we had a really good team. And I had an opportunity, actually. I was looking at Auburn.
Okay.
And Auburn's big time SEC. Well, their coach had just moved to Nashville while he was kind of recruiting me. He took the Belmont job. I'd kind of fallen in love with music during my time in high school too, so it made the Nashville connection made a lot of sense. Belmont being a music college made a lot of sense. So I went to Belmont. It was a really weird deal. I went to Belmont as an athlete to do music. I was the only one kind of in that category because you're either there for athletics or music pretty much. But it was a really interesting crossover.
That's great. Now, okay, that's I was going to ask about your music next, and that makes sense because Belmont is particularly known for that. So you went on golf and ended up in music, and you were part of a band, right?
Yeah, so let me back up there a little bit. So in high school, I had a dear friend by the name of Brian Derringer who was a couple years older than me, but he was very influential as far as me me wanting to get into music. He's a great guitar player. Well, his really good friend was a guy named Jim James, who is the lead singer of My Morning Jacket, which a lot of people in this town know.
Absolutely.
And so being around Brian and Jim and just watching kind of how they interacted with music and how great they were, it really influenced me to want to get into it. So I dabbled with guitar and writing songs in high school, but wasn't very good at it. But then when I got to Belmont, it was unbelievable being in that music culture of Nashville.
Sure.
Everybody, they make the comment that your waiter is probably a better musician than most people. And it's unbelievable. Belmont especially, I was surrounded by these amazing musicians, and everybody's very collaborative and helpful. It was just a really cool community, and I really fell in love with music. Now, my talent was with golf. And I really probably had a much higher ceiling there. It's where I'd spent my whole life. I mean, obviously my uncles were professionals. My dad was a professional. But to me, it was, my love was on the music side. So while I was trying to play golf and I tried to play professionally a little bit out when I was done with college, music is kind of where my heart was.
Okay. So your golf score went up and your music score.
There you go. There you go. That's a guy. I like the music score there. That one's good.
Okay. Rock music? What kind of music?
Yeah, it was rock music. It was a category.
It wasn't country because it was Nashville.
No, okay. It was called active rock.
Active rock.
We got lucky. I have unbelievable music stories. It's kind of crazy. I got on a plane with the Eagles once. We had the same management as the Eagles. And this is crazy. People probably don't even believe it unless you're a part of it. His name was Irving Azoff. Eagles, AC/DC, you name it. This guy was...
And Heaven Hill.
Well, and Heaven Hill was one of them. So, and actually it was a band called Element H at the time, but became Heaven Hill over time. But he came to us and said, listen, the Apple guy just called me, and we're going to switch gears. We're going to put you on this thing this Apple guy's doing, and we're just going to get in a van and we're going to tour, and we're not going to do the tour bus stuff. We're going to do the record deal stuff later. And we're all like, are you crazy? Because we had a song that was on the radio all over the country. Okay. And we're doing really, really well. And we had record labels coming at us from every different direction. And Louisville was really hot at that time. Days of the New, and there was a lot of really, really My Morning Jacket, a lot of great bands in this area. So all eyes were on us. And we were like, no, we're not going to do this. What are you even talking about? Well, he goes, well, I'm going to put you guys on it. You're going to be the first band. We were the first band ever on iTunes.
Really?
And Irvin Azoff started iTunes with Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
He called him the Apple guy. I wouldn't even know his name at the time. Had no idea what it was even called. But we were the pilot with iTunes, and it was us and a few other bands, but we were the very first band on it. And we didn't even know what it was. We couldn't see the vision, unfortunately. If we would have seen the vision, I probably would still be in the music business today. But we went a different route. And we went, Creed was a big band at the time. Their manager wanted us bad. We ended up getting a tour bus and signing a record label that it was just bad timing, because you got to think, record labels didn't know how to deal with the internet at that point. So things kind of went upside down for us, and I ended up going a different path with a career. But it was a very fun ride when it lasted.
That sounds like a great way to enjoy some years, golfing and music.
There you go.
Yeah, very good. Now, going from those two fields, how did you get involved in media work?
Yeah, so once I got out of the music business, I went back to my golf roots. I was a golf professional and eventually got elevated to the assistant GM at Oxmoor Country Club. And I always had kind of a techie background. I was always pretty good at building things. I was really good with computers. And so at the time, I had this idea of building a smartphone app. So I built a smartphone app, coded it all myself, learned how to do it for Oxmoor Country Club. It was really, really well. The members loved it. And I had a friend who was an incredible salesman, a guy named Brian Wesley. And he was like, Teague, I can sell this. Like, I think other courses will buy this. So we said, okay. And so we started a company. And before we knew it, 300 clubs had our app. We were all over the country. And it kind of built what today is Talgrace.
So golf and music becomes media, but you're still in golf.
Yeah, still in golf, still in the roots there. And listen, that was kind of an easy transition. I had a lot of contacts in the golf business, so it was easy for us to start there. Eventually, over time, the bigger companies got into smartphone apps and kind of pushed us out, and that's when we became more of a creative shop. But it was a really cool beginning for us.
Yeah, that's lots of entrepreneurial stuff going on there. That's really fun to hear. I didn't know about the app story. That's very good.
Well, and I tell you, so my mom, who passed away of breast cancer when I was 16, she owned a travel business, a travel agency here in town called Travel by Design. And she won all kinds of awards for being a woman entrepreneur. And I always kind of got that entrepreneur spirit from her. And I tell you, it would be interesting. So on the cusp of her passing away from cancer, she was dealing with internet and travel. And it really would have been interesting to see what she would have done, because I think she would have been on the forefront of that and would have been really neat. But
that's great. Well, such fun stories about you. Now, obviously, the Archdiocese works with you in a lot of different capacities, but the one I want to talk about predominantly is the one that I work with you on, which is the podcast world. What have you learned as a media person? Because this is still a relatively young version of media, podcasting. What have you learned from producing podcasts?
Yeah, so I've been doing podcasts really since podcasts were kind of a thing. And one of the things that I've learned, especially doing it for clients that are businesses, is you have to give some sort of value to the listener. Okay. So it's got to be entertaining. It's got to be funny. It's got to be something that you can listen to and get something out of. It can't just be a long commercial. And one of the things that's been interesting is podcasts that I thought were just going to be amazing and have huge numbers really maybe haven't done so well, and vice versa. Podcasts that I didn't think would be very interesting, people have loved. So it's as long as you're giving some sort of value to the listener at the end, and I think we do a really good job with that on this podcast, is our listeners really, we have a certain demographic, but they know when they listen, they're going to get something out of it. They're going to learn something about people in this community and why we do things in the Archdiocese the way we do. So just trying to give that value. That's the biggest thing that I think my takeaway is, you can't just have a commercial. It's got to be something that listeners want to listen to.
You know, the end user, the listener or the viewer has one piece of this, but there's lots of stuff behind the scenes. Obviously, we have to come up with the topic.
That's
we
right.
have to come up with guests. We have to come up with the themes we want to explore. We want to make it all those things you just said, interesting,
right.
Entertaining a little bit.
Yeah.
Inviting for listeners to listen in.
You have to have a good host.
Oh, well, he was busy today. So
yeah, fair enough. Okay.
And then you have the behind the scenes, the equipment, the studio. So there's lots of layers of this. Now I have to ask you, have you ever done a podcast and decided at the end, I got to throw this one out?
Oh, yeah.
You really?
Tons.
Okay.
Actually, ones with big names.
Okay.
With people that you thought, oh my goodness, this would have been, I'm not going to embarrass him, but there's a U of L guy that everybody knows. That we brought on, so excited for this particular, it's not a coach, but it's somebody in the Louisville media world. And we're just so excited. And he rambled and rambled and rambled, and it was monotone. And it's just, at the end, we said, we can't use this.
Okay.
And you just never know. And honestly, I would have thought it'd been the absolute opposite. But yeah, it's interesting. When that light comes on, sometimes people aren't very good at being able to speak.
Okay, so I feel safe now. I don't think you're throwing mine.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, listen. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about beyond podcasting. Just a minute. Tell about what else does Talgrace do?
So a line that I always like to use.
Not a commercial.
Not a commercial.
But it gets us insight into you.
Yeah. So a line that I use a lot is, I get to use my creativity, and I have a really awesome team here. I have a genius developer that I'm trying to keep NASA from hiring. I have some really, really creative people. We like to make really cool stuff here, whether it's video, graphic design, social media posts, websites. And then the thing that I think we're really good at, and I learned this from a former business partner who was a VP at Google, is you got to make it for the right eyeballs. And I think that's something we do really good for this podcast, is we know who our listeners are and we go down the right path. As long as you're putting things that are really interesting and really neat and really cool in front of the right eyeballs, you can be successful. And so that's kind of what we do here at Talgrace.
Okay. So when you're involved in that kind of media, you kind of see behind the scenes a lot. No personal stories on a person, but surprises you've discovered?
Big time. So we're entrenched in the schools.
Yeah.
So we're big in not only the grade schools, but the high schools. And you're right, you get to see behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And there's times when I've been extremely impressed, and there's times that I've been kind of weary. So yeah, you're right. You could see behind the curtain a little bit.
Besides the Archdiocese, we'll do a little shout out here. Who are some of your other Catholic partners?
Yeah, so two really, really important ones for me. The first one's the Catholic Education Foundation, which is near and dear to my heart. And the second is the Catholic Schools Athletic Association. And I'm effectively the chief marketing officer for both. I don't really have that title, but that's kind of the role I sit for both. And both of them are very, very important. The Catholic Education Foundation changes lives daily, giving kids an opportunity to go to a school that they otherwise wouldn't have. And then the Catholic Schools Athletic Association, it's kind of the same mission. I don't know if people really get how important it is for, if you have a kid that goes to a Catholic school that may have zero athletic ability, they're not getting cut. They're making a team. Yeah. They may be on the D team out of A, B, C, D, but they're going to be on a team, and they get to have that experience of being part of the community and learning all those life lessons that sports teaches you. And I just think it's such an important mission that in this Archdiocese.
That's great. Great. We talked about Teague, but that's where Talgrace come from.
Yeah, I wish this was a more interesting story, but
we can make it up.
At the time, my business partner, Brian Wesley, and I, who I started with, I had a son named Talon, and he has a daughter named Grace. So we put them together, and that became Talgrace. The big thing for me was if you put it in Google, I wanted to be the only thing that showed up. And so Talgrace is it. So when you put in TALGRACE, we're it. And that was very important for me from a domain name standpoint, from a search engine optimization standpoint. So that's kind of how we ended up there. It's two of our kids' names combined.
Oh, I got it. Now that makes a lot of sense because I never knew the answer to that question. Well, we're grateful. The Archdiocese, some of the other partners you named, which are very important to the Archdiocese too, as well as my experience and other projects you've done for us, for our development offer, for the Archbishop. You're a very valuable colleague, so we thank you for that.
No, I appreciate that. I love the work.
I want to take the time we have in our show today beyond talking about your business. Let's talk about you a little bit.
Okay.
Let's get behind that curtain.
All right.
A little bit. So talk about your work, your family, your faith. You spend a lot of your time connected to the church personally. We mentioned that you were active at Ascension. Tell me about your relationship with Ascension Parish.
So I'm going to reference something that I heard Archbishop say here recently. Archbishop Fobb made a comment. He was asked about time, treasure, talent. And obviously that's something that the church has often asked parishioners to give. Treasure is important because that keeps everything going. But the thing that he felt like was maybe the most important was time. And the reason he said that is he said, hey, you don't get time back. Yeah. When you give your time up, that's not something you get back. And I have given an insane amount of my time to Ascension Parish. It's been a labor of love for me. I was athletic director there for 8 years. And we created an environment there athletically that was second to none. You really kind of felt like you were going into this mini Yum Center when you'd come play a volleyball or a basketball game there. And I loved it. And it was something that was a very deep passion of mine. Just this past January, we handed over the reins. But I loved my time as AD at Ascension. The other part of that is Ascension's doors were pretty much getting ready to close. The numbers were down, and I got with the principal there, Terry Mullady, who's a good friend of mine, and we came up with a plan, and we created a rocket ship, and that place is just incredible now, and being able to be an influential part of that was extremely important to me. And during that period, I sat on pretty much every board you could sit on, whether it be picnics. My wife Laura ran the PTO. We were just really, really, really involved in Ascension. It was just, we gave as much time as you could possibly give to a parish, and we still value and would do it again today.
It's hidden behind some of what you just shared, and it was on and off in other pieces. Faith, and work, how are they connected?
Extremely connected, and hopefully we'll get to that a little bit here later with another question. But the faith part is extremely important. So I grew up in a family that wasn't very faith-filled. My dad and my mom weren't religious at all. The reason I got sent to Ascension in third grade because of the busing. So I was going to St. Matthew's Elementary, and I was going to get bused downtown, and they weren't comfortable with that, so they ended up sending me to Ascension School. And I did not actually become Catholic until 7th grade, and that was my decision. And it was something that I didn't do just because I was in the Catholic atmosphere. I really kind of bought in. And I had a great priest at the time, and it was a thing that it was very important to me. And honestly, I love the fact that the kids come into schools midstream that aren't religious when they get there, because I think you can find that faith. And I've found it as a seventh grader, and I have it until this day.
That's a great story. You mentioned Laura, who's your wife. So she works here at Talgrace.
She does.
Keeps things moving here.
Yeah, people think that's crazy that we work together.
Is that you could tell that another story. We'll have another show.
That's right.
Marriage and work. That's right. So family. Talk about your family.
Yeah, listen, that's so the Ridge family. My grandmother, who passed away here 2 years ago, she was 101. Her whole motto in life was, when you have a child, your life becomes about that child. Your whole life shifts, and it becomes about trying to give your kids the best life possible. My dad has 100% lived that life. Everything he's done in life has been for me. And I think Laura and I are trying to live that now for our kids. We're trying to be as involved as humanly possible. We coach everything. We're as involved with our kids as we can be, because one of these days you're not going to be. There's going to come that time where you don't get to clean the jerseys anymore, and they're out on their own. So we try to spend every second we can with our kids. I love coaching. I coached a baseball team for the last 7 years that have become a huge passion of mine. We're a really good team, but being able to coach my son, and I've done everything the wrong way. I've yelled at him too much. I've gotten on him too much. And I think this year I'm finally going to find the secret sauce and get it right for once. But we just love being around our kids.
Let me ask you about that. As a husband, as a father, when you get your coaching and your business both, so your work world here, your family's involved in, your coaching volunteer time, your family's involved in, husband and father with family. That's a lot of titles.
It is.
You started to say coaching your son. How was that?
I love it. Yeah. And honestly, so when he went to Trinity this year and played baseball, it was the first time I hadn't coached him really since he was little, and it was hard. And it was one of those things where kind of handing that reins over. And that's one of the reasons we went to Trinity, is we trusted the coaching staff, and we knew that we could trust them to coach them the right way. But it's coaching your kids. Last night, I got to coach a field hockey game. My daughter's team, Ascension, beat St. Margaret Mary. That's not supposed to happen. And it was unbelievable. It was just such a cool feeling. And just being able to be part of those moments is very, very important to me.
Did you end up second-guessing the coach at Trinity? Well, I wouldn't have coached him like that. Or son, let me tell you what the real answer is. No, you don't have to.
Unfortunately, those thoughts have gone through my head, yes. But as a coach, you also got to know that you have to give coaches their space and their lead way. And thankfully, I've been complained to enough as a coach that I'm not going to do that to another coach.
You've circled the airport a couple of times talking about schools. Obviously, any parent, and you and Laura are a good example, makes a sacrifice if they're going to send your child to a Catholic school, to a private school, to a religious school. I think I know the answer because of what you said happened to you, but how does that decision fit with you?
So you use the word sacrifice, and this is something that's a word I used to use quite often. And Rich Lecklider, who I respect immensely, said, Teague, it's not a sacrifice, it's an investment. And it's not only an investment, it's the most important investment you can make in your family's future. And I think that's how Laura and I look at it. Trinity's not cheap. Ascension's not cheap. It is a major investment to send our kids to Catholic schools. But the way we look at it is, you're sending your kid to school for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, whatever it is. You have to have help. And you want to put your kid not only in a situation that academically, athletically, they can do really great things, but being that they're in a situation that they're learning about God, and they're enriching their faith, and they're enriching these service opportunities, you put them in situations to where you get a lot of help. And the Catholic schools help you raise your kids to become the adults and the humans you want them to be. And that's why it's such a worthy investment.
it's a good number of years off, but as a grandfather, my experience is it's another new experience. And when you end up in some of those same roles, I wonder how you'll be coaching your grandchildren. That'll be an interesting.
I think about this often, that I can't wait. My son's going to be a coach. He's built to be a coach. Well, he helps me coach. Actually, my son and I coached the 8th grade basketball team last year at Ascension. We had a blast together. There's going to be a time where he's coaching his kids, and I'm waiting for that day for him to say, "Dad, can you help me coach this team?" I can't wait.
That's very good. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to think the future. I suspect. Do you still golf, by the way?
I do. Well, I have some back issues because of all my years of golf, but I can still get it around. I'd say I'm still about a 1-2 handicap, but
Well, that's good.
yeah. Well, and so my son and I played a lot together. My dad plays every day. Well, not every day, but close to every day, and he has shot his age, we think, 75 times now. Wow. That's my goal, is to be able to shoot my age at some point. Can't do that yet, but at some point I hope to be able to shoot my age and kind of follow my dad's lead there. But that's the end goal.
There's all those terrible golf jokes. I can shoot my age, but I still got 9 more holes.
That's right.
But that's a different question. Okay. But what I want to ask you is about the future. So let's go back into the media world because you were on the cutting edge through your family in the golf world, inventors. I didn't know about the inventions of your uncle and so forth, and helping build and design golf courses. And then you got into music, and you were founding of a band, and were first in the even on the internet a little bit there. So where's media going? I'm going to ask you after that, where's media going for the church? But I just want to know, where do you see media going?
There's this old marketing adage that when I was in marketing school, way back when, taking my marketing classes, they wanted people to see something 7 times. So once you saw something 7 times, they felt like you would retain it. Now that number's more like 35 because we're so inundated with media on a daily basis. We're sitting in front of our phones or computers with social media. So I think that Reels. So you see Reels on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. That's really, businesses are going to have to get really, really involved in the Reels world and be really good from a 30-second to a minute message. Now, the kicker of that is you have 3 seconds to catch them. So that first 3 seconds, you have to be really good, or they're not going to watch the rest. So that's kind of where the world's going. And from a media agency, we've got to figure out how to get really good at those first 3 seconds.
Wow. I guess that's what's behind things like the Super Bowl commercials, and then
absolutely
the millions they pay just for 30 seconds or
absolutely
50 seconds, and they make those imprints on your head. Oh dear. 30 seconds. Listen, there's tunes on the radio or TV that they pay 35 times in an hour, and if they don't stop playing that advertising, I'm going to scream.
Well, that's the reason. I mean, and you hear these voices with annoying voices, or the dealer for the people. People remember that, and you got to come up with these ways to really ingrain things in people's minds. That's how marketing works. And from the church side, I'm fortunate enough to be able to help with the CSA campaign, and we work really, really hard. You have a great CSA team, and Melissa Herberger and Molly Smith, and we work really hard to try to figure out ways to make people remember all the different things that the CSA does. And it's tough because a lot of people look at the CSA and think, oh, it's a retirement fund for priests. That's not it. That is a very small piece of what the CSA does. So we work really hard to try to figure out how to make sure people retain the things that your money goes to.
The media relationship to church has been unique over the years. You go back to famous people from the past who were media stars, were church related. But it's a newer discovery for us in Louisville. We've had, Mass of the Air and some television spots. But now doing this regularly, your turn to tell us something here. What do you advise us as a church about media?
To be real. And I think one of the problems that people have, not only in the church, but political, is they try to tell people what they want to hear as opposed to what the real story is. And I think that I think that's something that Archbishop Fobb's done a really good job of, is you have to be real. You have to tell people what the truth is. And especially in the political climate that we're in right now, you don't always get the truth. And people are starting to figure out how to navigate their beliefs and what they think the truth is. So my advice to anybody, especially in the church world, is you got to be honest and real with the message you're putting out, or people aren't going to buy it.
We'll take that to heart. Teague, thank you. Thank you for what you do for us on this program and all the other ways you serve the church. Thank you for your work at Ascension and the broader community, and for being our guest today. On the other side of the microphone is we got to look a little bit behind the curtain.
I'm humbled to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
Golf and music and marketing and television and coaching and advice giving. Thank you. You're a good colleague and friend to us. And thank you, our viewers, for tuning in and listening to us in this month's episode of What's New in ArchLou. Tune again next month.